The alarm went off at exactly 6:15 a.m., same as every other Tuesday. I rolled over, silencing it before it could wake Sarah next door. My daughter had always been a light sleeper, and getting her up too early meant a cranky morning for both of us. I lay there for a moment, watching the dim early morning light filter through my bedroom blinds, creating thin lines across my ceiling. The house creaked its familiar morning sounds as the heating kicked in. I'd been meaning to get someone to look at that. The unit was probably older than Sarah herself. But between the mortgage and saving for her college fund, home repairs always seemed to slip to the bottom of my priority list. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and studied myself in the mirror. At 42, the gray was starting to creep in at my temples, and the lines around my eyes were getting deeper. Sarah liked to tell me they were smile wrinkles, but I knew better. 8 years of single parenthood had left their mark. I was halfway through making lunch, peanut butter and banana sandwich, carrot sticks, and those little chocolate cookies Sarah loved, when I heard her bedroom door open. The familiar shuffle of sock-covered feet on hardwood made me smile.
"Morning, monkey," I called out, not turning around. "Sleep okay?" Sarah's response was a sleepy grunt as she climbed onto one of the kitchen stools. Her dark hair was a mess of tangles, and she was still clutching Mr. Whiskers, the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. "You remembered the cookies this time?" she asked, eyeing the lunch bag I was packing. I patted my chest in mock offense. "That was one time, 3 weeks ago, and you're still not letting me live it down?" A hint of a smile crossed Sarah's face. "It was a very traumatic experience, Dad. Jenny had Oreos, and all I had were stupid apple slices." "Ah yes, the great cookie crisis of 2024. How could I forget?" I slid a bowl of cereal across the counter to her. "Eat up, kiddo. We're running a little behind schedule." While Sarah ate, I checked my phone. A text from work. Marcus calling in sick again. That would mean another day of covering extra machinery at the factory. My back was still sore from Thursday when I'd had to pull a double shift. Outside, the morning was unusually still. A heavy fog had settled over our small town of Millbrook, the kind that seemed to muffle even the sound of birds. I could barely make out the Andersons' house next door through the thick gray soup. "Looks spooky out there," Sarah commented, now fully awake and peering out the kitchen window. She pressed her nose against the glass, her breath creating small circles of condensation. "Like in those horror movies you won't let me watch." "Which is exactly why you're not allowed to watch them," I replied, gathering up our things. "And it's just fog, probably burn off by noon." But something about the fog did seem different. It hung unnaturally still, with none of the usual swirling or drifting you'd expect. I pushed the thought aside. I had enough real things to worry about without inventing new ones. The drive to Sarah's school was slower than usual. The fog seemed to get thicker as we made our way through town, forcing me to lean forward in my seat, squinting to make out the road ahead. The radio droned on about poor visibility in the surrounding counties, but the morning DJ seemed more concerned with making fog puns than providing actual information. "Hey, Dad?" Sarah's voice came from the back seat. "Why does the fog look weird?" I glanced in the rearview mirror. "Weird how?" "I don't know, just weird. Like it's watching us or something." I chuckled, but it came out a bit forced. "Fog can't watch anything, monkey. It's just water droplets in the air." "I know that," Sarah said, but she didn't sound convinced. She hugged Mr. Whiskers closer to her chest. The elementary school parking lot was its usual morning chaos, made worse by the limited visibility. I had to brake suddenly when Mrs. Peterson's minivan backed out without warning, earning a muffled curse that I hoped Sarah didn't catch. "Drama club after school?" I asked as Sarah gathered her backpack. She nodded. "We're painting the set for the play today. Ms. Russell says I can help with the forest backdrop." "That's great, honey. I hesitated, an inexplicable urge to keep her home today rising in my chest. I pushed it down. Just have fun, okay? I'll pick you up at 4:30. Sarah gave me a quick hug and hopped out of the car. I watched her disappear into the fog, her purple backpack the last thing visible before the gray swallowed her completely. The factory was only a 10-minute drive from the school, but it felt longer today. The fog had developed a strange quality to it, seeming to press against the car windows like something solid. I found myself repeatedly checking my mirrors, though I couldn't have said exactly what I was looking for. The radio signal started cutting in and out, static interrupting the morning news. Through the interference, I caught fragments about unusual weather patterns and stay tuned for updates, but nothing specific enough to be helpful. The parking lot at Miller & Sons Manufacturing was half empty when I arrived. I badged in through the employee entrance, nodding to Rita at security. She was looking at her phone with unusual intensity, her normally cheerful face creased with concern. "Everything okay?" I asked, pausing at her desk. Rita started, nearly dropping her phone. "Oh, Thomas, yes, just checking the weather. My sister in Riverside says the fog's even worse there. Says it's making people feel strange." "Strange how?" She shrugged, but her eyes kept darting to the windows. She didn't say exactly, just strange. The production floor was oddly quiet when I reached it. Usually there'd be the usual morning banter, complaints about Monday night football, debates about lunch plans. Today, everyone seemed focused on their work, or maybe just distracted. The huge factory windows, normally letting in plenty of natural light, were completely obscured by the fog. "Thompson's out sick," my supervisor Jack mentioned as I clocked in. "Need you to cover his station too." I nodded, already calculating how much extra Tylenol I'd need for my back. "Any word on when this fog's supposed to clear?" Jack glanced at the windows, then quickly looked away. "Weather service says they're uncertain. Never seen anything quite like it, apparently." As the morning wore on, the fog seemed to grow even thicker if that was possible. The fluorescent lights in the factory took on a sickly quality, creating strange shadows in the corners of the room. More than once, I caught myself staring at those shadows, thinking they looked almost like figures standing just out of sight. Around 11, I noticed people starting to gather near the break room TV. The volume was too low to hear from my station, but I could see the emergency broadcast system banner scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Probably a severe weather warning, I thought, though I'd never seen them issue one for fog before. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Sarah. "Dad, the fog is being weird again. Ms. Russell won't let us go outside for recess." I typed back quickly, "Probably just being careful because of visibility." Nothing to worry about. But as I slipped the phone back into my pocket, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe there was something to worry about after all. The fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, and somewhere in the distance, I could have sworn I heard sirens. I checked my watch. 11:47 a.m. Less than 5 hours until I could pick up Sarah and head home. The fog would probably be cleared by then, I told myself. Everything would be back to normal. But deep down, in that instinctive part of my brain that had kept me alive as a soldier and alert as a parent, I knew that normal wasn't coming back. Not today. Maybe not ever again. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a text. The screen showed the familiar emergency alert symbol. And as I watched, every other phone in the factory began to buzz as well, a chorus of electronic warnings rising above the machine noise. I read the message once, then again, my hands beginning to shake. Emergency alert. Close all windows now. Do not look outside. My hands were still shaking as I lowered the phone. Around me, the factory floor had erupted into confused murmurs as everyone read the same message. Jack was already striding toward the windows, shouting for people to step back while he pulled down the industrial shutters. "Everyone stay calm," he called out, but his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "We're going to follow protocol and..." My phone rang, cutting through the chaos. Sarah's school. My heart stopped for a moment before I answered. Mr. Reynolds? The voice belonged to Principal Harrison, and something in his tone made my skin crawl. I'd known Dave Harrison for 3 years. Our kids had been in the same class since 2nd grade. He'd never called me Mr. Reynolds before. We need you to come get Sarah, immediately. Dave? What's going on? There was a pause, filled only with the sound of his breathing. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. Just come quickly, Thomas. And whatever you do, don't look directly outside. Keep your eyes on the ground, please. The line went dead before I could respond. I was already moving, grabbing my jacket from my station. Jack caught my arm as I headed for the door. Thomas, we're supposed to stay inside. The alert. My daughter, was all I said. He let go immediately, nodding. He had kids too. He understood. The factory corridors seemed longer than usual as I made my way to the exit. Rita wasn't at her security desk, the first time I'd ever seen it unmanned during a shift. Through the glass doors, I could see the parking lot was obscured by that unnaturally thick fog. I pushed through the doors, keeping my eyes down like Harrison had said. The fog felt wrong against my skin, not wet like it should be, but almost staticky, like walking through an old TV signal. The air hummed with a low frequency I could feel in my teeth. My truck was only 30 feet away, but it felt like walking a mile. I forced myself to focus on the concrete, counting my steps. 1, 2, 3. Something moved in my peripheral vision, a tall, thin shape that shouldn't have been there. 4, 5, 6. Another movement, closer this time. 7, 8. I fumbled with my keys, hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped them. As I reached for the door handle, I caught a glimpse of something in the truck's side mirror. A pale, elongated figure standing perfectly still about 20 feet behind me. I jerked my eyes away before I could see more, Harrison's warning echoing in my head. The truck's engine roared to life, too loud in the muffled atmosphere. I kept my eyes fixed on the steering wheel as I pulled out of the parking lot. The fog pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in. Twice I had to stop and wipe the windshield, not because it was wet, but because the gray seemed to be seeping through somehow. Main Street was chaos. I could hear crashes and screaming even through the closed windows. A man ran past my truck, his eyes wide and unfocused, mouth moving in silent words. I forced myself not to watch where he was running to. Ahead, someone had abandoned their car in the middle of the road, driver's door still open. I swerved around it, keeping my eyes on the taillights of the car in front of me. It was the only way to navigate, following the red glow through the gray soup. The radio was nothing but static now, punctuated by bursts of what sounded like distant voices speaking words I couldn't quite make out. A gunshot cracked through the air somewhere to my left. Then another. And another. I pressed the accelerator harder, weaving through the abandoned vehicles. In my rearview mirror, which I was carefully only glancing at to check for other cars, the fog seemed to be getting darker, more concentrated. The elementary school parking lot was a nightmare of panicked parents and running figures. I pulled up to the curb, laying on the horn 3 times, our signal, something Sarah and I had worked out years ago for emergencies. Through the fog, I could make out the school's front doors, firmly closed. My phone rang again. Harrison. I see you, he said quickly. Stay in your truck, keep the engine running. I'm bringing Sarah out personally. Dave, what? Not now, he cut me off. Just trust me. And Thomas? If you see anyone else out here who looks wrong, don't acknowledge them. Don't look at them. Don't respond if they speak to you. The line went dead again. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, staring straight ahead at the school's brick wall. My military training was screaming at me to assess the situation, to look around and identify threats. But something deeper, something more primitive, told me that looking would be the worst mistake I could make. The school's front door opened with a metallic creak that carried eerily through the fog. I could see Harrison's familiar shape leading a smaller figure, Sarah, clutching Mr. Whiskers to her chest. They moved quickly but carefully, Harrison's hand firm on Sarah's shoulder, guiding her. "Eyes down, Sarah," I heard him say as they approached. "Just like we practiced? Look at your feet. Count the steps." I reached across and opened the passenger door. Sarah climbed in quickly, and I caught a glimpse of her face, pale, frightened, but unharmed. Harrison helped her with her seatbelt, his movements precise and efficient. "Thomas," he said, leaning in slightly but keeping his eyes fixed on the dashboard. "Get her home. Barricade your doors and windows. Don't let anyone in, no matter what they say or who they sound like." "Dave," I started, but he was already pulling back. "No time. Just keep her safe. And remember, don't look at them. Don't look at their eyes." He shut the door firmly and turned back toward the school, moving with the same careful, measured steps. I watched him until he reached the doors, never once lifting his gaze from the ground. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was small, scared. "What's happening?" "I don't know, monkey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I pulled away from the curb. "But we're going home. Everything's going to be okay." A lie, maybe, but right now it was all I had. The drive home was a blur of careful navigation and avoided glances. The fog had grown so thick it seemed to have texture, writhing against the windows like something alive. Sarah kept her face buried in Mr. Whiskers' worn fur, only looking up once when we heard more gunshots, closer this time. "There's someone standing in Mrs. Kelly's yard," she whispered at one point. "Don't look," I said quickly. Just keep your eyes closed, okay?" We're almost home. But I'd seen it too, in the corner of my eye. A tall, impossibly thin figure, standing perfectly still in our neighbor's front yard. As we passed, I could have sworn I heard a sound like television static growing louder. Our driveway had never looked so welcome. I pulled in quickly, killing the engine. "Okay, Sarah, we're going to go inside fast, all right? Keep your eyes down, just like Mr. Harrison said." She nodded, clutching Mr. Whiskers tighter. I got out first, hurrying around to her side of the truck. The static feeling in the air was stronger now, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something moved at the edge of my vision. Another one of those tall figures, standing at the end of our driveway. I grabbed Sarah's hand, and we moved quickly to the front door. My keys jingled too loudly in the strange, muffled atmosphere. Behind us, I could hear something that might have been footsteps, slow and deliberate, but I didn't turn to look. Couldn't turn to look. The door opened and we practically fell inside. I slammed it shut, throwing the deadbolt and chain. Sarah stood in the hallway, trembling slightly as I moved through the house, pulling blinds and closing curtains. "Help me," I said, trying to keep her occupied. "We need to block all the windows. Get the blankets from the hall closet." As we worked, I could hear them gathering outside. Soft footsteps on our front lawn, the ever-present static growing stronger. Sarah and I moved methodically through the house, covering every window, every crack where the gray fog might seep in. Finally, we stood in the living room, our sanctuary secured. Sarah looked up at me, her brown eyes wide with questions I wasn't sure how to answer. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Before I could respond, every electronic device in the house, our phones, the TV, even Sarah's tablet on the coffee table, burst into life with another emergency alert. The message was longer this time, and as I read it, I felt my blood run cold. Do not look at the entities outside. Do not respond to familiar voices. Do not invite them in. Stay inside. Help is coming. Outside, something began tapping gently on our living room window. The tapping continued, gentle but insistent. Sarah pressed closer to me, her small hand finding mine in the dim light of our living room. I forced myself to breathe slowly, trying to project a calm I didn't feel. "Let's go to the kitchen," I whispered, guiding her away from the window. "I'll make us some hot chocolate." The kitchen felt safer somehow, with its familiar surfaces and lack of windows, except for the small one above the sink, now covered with an old beach towel. I kept Sarah busy getting mugs and marshmallows while I heated milk on the stove, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. The static sound had grown stronger, seeming to seep through the walls themselves. It reminded me of late nights as a kid, when the TV stations would go off air, leaving nothing but snow and that distinctive hiss. But this was different, more rhythmic, almost like breathing. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was barely audible over the humming air. "What are they?" I stirred the hot chocolate, buying time. "I don't know, monkey, but we're safe in here. That's what matters." "I saw one," she admitted, clutching Mr. Whiskers tighter. "Before Mr. Harrison got me from the classroom. It was standing in the playground by the swings. It was so tall." My hand tightened on the wooden spoon. "Sarah." "I didn't look at its face," she added quickly. "Ms. Russell told us not to. She made us practice walking with our eyes down. But I could see its hands. They were wrong." I poured the hot chocolate, adding extra marshmallows to both mugs. Outside, something scraped against the siding of the house, a sound like long fingernails dragging across wood. Sarah flinched. "Here's what we're going to do," I said, sitting down beside her at the kitchen island. "We're going to drink our hot chocolate, and then we're going to set up camp in the living room. Just like we do during thunderstorms, remember?" She nodded, taking a small sip from her mug. "With the blanket fort?" "With the blanket fort, and we'll wait until..." A sound cut through the static, a voice from outside, too close to the kitchen window. "Please," it said, the word distorted like a badly tuned radio. "Please help me. It's so cold out here." Sarah's eyes widened. "That sounds like Ms. Russell." "It's not," I said firmly, though my mouth had gone dry. "Remember what the alert said? Don't respond to familiar voices." The voice came again, clearer this time. "Sarah? Thomas? I know you're in there. Please let me in. They're coming." I could see Sarah's hands trembling around her mug. The voice did sound exactly like Kate Russell. The same gentle tone she used in parent-teacher conferences, the same slight Carolina accent. But something was off about it, like a record played at slightly the wrong speed. "The living room," I whispered. "Now." We moved quietly through the house, leaving our half-finished hot chocolate behind. The static grew stronger as we passed the front windows, and I caught movement through a small gap in the curtains. Tall, pale shapes drifting through the fog like dead trees in the wind. I made Sarah sit on the couch while I gathered supplies, blankets, pillows, her emergency flashlight shaped like a unicorn. Anything to keep some hint of childhood innocence in this nightmare. The tapping had spread now, coming from multiple windows, synchronized like some terrible symphony. "Thomas!" Another voice joined the first, this one deeper, male, Principal Harrison's voice. "Thomas, they're gone now. It's safe. Let us in." My hands shook as I draped a blanket over 2 chairs, creating the beginning of our fort. I could feel Sarah watching me, could sense her wanting to believe the voices were real. "Sarah!" the Ms. Russell voice called again, honey sweet and wrong. "I have your art project, the one you were working on this morning. Don't you want to finish it?" "That's not Ms. Russell," Sarah whispered, but I could hear the doubt in her voice. "It can't be. We saw her get in her car, right before..." She trailed off, and I was grateful she didn't finish the thought. I didn't want to know what she'd seen in those last moments at school. The fort took shape slowly, blankets and chairs creating a small, safe space in the middle of our living room. I strung up Sarah's unicorn lights inside, their soft glow pushing back against the gray light that seemed to be seeping through our makeshift window coverings. A third voice joined the chorus outside, Mrs. Peterson from next door. "I brought cookies," it called. "The kind Sarah likes. Please, it's not safe out here." The static was overwhelming now, making it hard to think. Through it, I could hear other sounds, shuffling footsteps in our yard, something that might have been whimpering, the continuous scratching at our walls. The fog pressed against our house like a living thing, searching for ways in. "Look," Sarah said suddenly, pointing to the bottom of the front door. Gray tendrils of fog were creeping under the gap, bringing that TV snow static with them. I grabbed a towel from our supply pile and stuffed it against the door, but the fog seemed to be finding other ways in. Around window frames, through air vents, between floorboards. "Inside," I said, gesturing to the fort. "Quick." Sarah crawled in, Mr. Whiskers clutched to her chest. I followed, pulling the blanket door closed behind us. In the soft glow of the unicorn lights, she looked so young, so vulnerable. I reached out and pulled her close, feeling her trembling against me. "Tell me a story," she whispered, "like you used to when I was little." Outside, the voices had multiplied, a chorus of familiar tones calling our names, pleading for help, promising safety, each one perfect in its mimicry, each one somehow fundamentally wrong. "Once upon a time," I began, my voice barely audible over the static, "there was a brave princess and her father, the knight." "No dragons," Sarah interrupted, a ghost of her normal self showing through. "Dragons are scary." "No dragons," I agreed, "just..." A loud thump against the living room window made us both jump. Something was pressing against the glass, a hand, pale and elongated, fingers too long and jointed in the wrong places. The blankets blocked most of the view, but I could see its shadow through the fabric, backlit by the strange gray light outside. "Don't look," I whispered, turning Sarah's face against my chest. "Just listen to my voice. Once upon a time." I kept talking, spinning a story about brave princesses and loyal knights, about safe castles and sunny days. But my eyes were fixed on that shadow hand as it slowly dragged down the glass, leaving trails in the fog like tears. The voices outside had changed, becoming less distinct, blending with the static until they were just noise. A wall of sound that might have been words once, might have been names, might have been screams. Sarah's breathing had steadied, becoming deeper and more regular. She was falling asleep, exhausted by fear and tension. I held her closer, my free hand pressed against Mr. Whisker's worn fur. Through a gap in the blankets, I could see the fog continuing to seep in, gathering in corners like spider webs. The static had become almost musical now, a high, sweet tone that made me want to look, just for a moment, just to see. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to focus on Sarah's breathing, on the solidity of the floor beneath us, on anything but that siren song of static and fog. "Once upon a time," I whispered again, as much to myself as to my sleeping daughter. "Once upon a time, there was a brave princess and her father, and they survived the night. They had to. They had to." Outside, something that wore Kate Russell's voice began to sing a lullaby, the same one she used to calm her kindergarten class during storms. The sound mixed with the static, creating a melody that pulled at something deep in my brain, trying to convince me it was safe to look, safe to open the door, safe to let them in. I pressed my face into Sarah's hair and began to hum, loud enough to drown out the song, quiet enough not to wake her. An old tune my wife used to sing before the cancer took her. A real lullaby, a true one. The gray light outside was getting darker, or maybe thicker. Night was coming, and somewhere in the static-filled darkness, I could hear them gathering, waiting, watching our little fortress of blankets and childhood lights with their static-filled eyes. Sarah shifted in her sleep, murmuring something I couldn't quite catch. I pulled the blanket tighter around us both, watching the fog curl and dance in the corners of our living room. The night was just beginning. The emergency broadcast tone cut through the static like a knife, making Sarah stir against my chest. In the dim glow of the unicorn lights, I fumbled for my phone, keeping my eyes carefully averted from the gaps in our blanket fort. The message scrolled across my screen, its blue light harsh in our soft-lit sanctuary. Alert update. Entities identified as hollow ones. Avoid all eye contact. Direct eye contact results in immediate transformation. They cannot enter homes unless invited. Remain inside. Block all windows. Maintain silence. Help is en route. Sarah's eyes fluttered open as my phone's alert tone was joined by others. Her tablet, the emergency radio in the kitchen, even the TV we'd left on mute. Each device spread the same message, their combined light making our blanket walls glow like stained glass. "What time is it?" she mumbled, clutching Mr. Whiskers closer. "Just past midnight," I whispered. The voices outside had quieted somewhat, but the static remained, a constant presence like electricity in the air. "Go back to sleep if you can." "I can't." She sat up slightly, rubbing her eyes. "The humming is too loud." She was right. The static had taken on a new quality, less like TV snow now and more like the drone of distant machinery. It seemed to pulse in time with the fog that still seeped through our barriers, gathering in corners and swirling in patterns that caught the eye if you looked too long. "Do you think Ms. Russell is okay?" Sarah asked suddenly, her voice small in the darkness. "And Mr. Harrison? And everyone else?" I pulled her closer, not sure how to answer. "I hope so, monkey. They knew not to look at them, just like we did." "I keep thinking about the one I saw at school," she whispered. "By the swings. It was so tall, and its hands..." She shuddered. "I'm glad Ms. Russell made us look down." "You did exactly right," I assured her, trying to keep my own voice steady. "That's what's keeping us safe. Not looking at them, not letting them in." Through the gaps in our fort, I could see their shadows moving past the windows, their shapes wrong in ways that defied description. The static from their presence filled the air, making my teeth ache. A new sound cut through the humming. Footsteps on our front porch, slower and more deliberate than before. They stopped right outside our living room window. "Thomas?" The voice belonged to Jack from the factory, but wrong somehow, distorted. "Come on, man, let me in. The others are coming. I can help protect Sarah." The voice was perfect in its details, the slight gruffness Jack always had, the way he emphasized certain words. But underneath it all was something else, something that made my skin crawl. "It's not him," I said firmly, though my voice shook. "Remember what the alert said. They're trying to trick us." "But it sounds so real," Sarah whispered, pressing closer to me. "I know." I held her tighter as the thing with Jack's voice continued its pleas. "But it's not. It's just pretending." The voice changed to Ms. Russell's, then to Principal Harrison's, cycling through people we knew, trying to find one that would make us open the door. Sarah pressed her hands over her ears, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Make it stop," she whispered. "Please make it stop." I started humming again, an old Beatles song this time, "Here Comes the Sun." Sarah joined in after a moment, her voice trembling but growing stronger. We got louder and louder, drowning out the sobs until they finally faded away. But the footsteps returned, circling the house now. Through the gaps in our fort, I could see shadows passing across the gray fog, tall, impossibly thin figures moving with an unnatural grace. The static grew stronger with each pass, making my teeth ache. "There has to be a reason," Sarah said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "Why they want in so badly. Why they're trying to trick us. What happens to the people who look at their eyes?" She was thinking out loud, her brow furrowed in concentration. Do they Do they need more of them? Like a virus? Sometimes I forgot how smart she was, how her mind worked through problems. Maybe, I said, but we're not going to find out. We're going to stay right here until help comes. But what if help doesn't come? She looked up at me, her eyes too old for her face. What if this is everywhere? What if... A loud thud came from the kitchen, something heavy hitting the window above the sink. The beach towel we'd used to cover it shifted slightly, letting in a thin beam of that strange gray light. "Stay here," I whispered, but Sarah grabbed my arm. "No, you can't go out there." The thuds continued, rhythmic and deliberate. They were testing our defenses, I realized, looking for weak points. They couldn't come in uninvited, but they were trying to frighten us, to make us panic and open the doors ourselves. I pulled Sarah to the far corner of our fort, positioning myself between her and the blanket door. The unicorn lights flickered, their cheerful glow suddenly seeming pathetically inadequate against the darkness pressing in. "If anything happens," I whispered, "you run to Mrs. Anderson's house next door. Don't stop, don't look back, don't look at anything. Just run and pound on her door until she lets you in. Promise me." "Daddy, no." "Promise me, Sarah." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. The footsteps were closer now, accompanied by that same weird clicking sound. The static had become almost unbearable, a physical pressure against my ears. And then, cutting through it all, a new sound. Sirens in the distance, growing closer. Real sirens, not the strange approximations the hollow ones had tried to mimic earlier. Sarah's head snapped up, hope flashing across her face. The clicking footsteps stopped. The static wavered, like a radio losing signal. Outside, I could hear movement. Dozens of those two tall figures rushing past our windows, their shadows racing through the fog. The sirens grew louder, joined by the distinctive thrum of helicopter rotors. Bright lights began cutting through the fog, real lights, clean and white, not the sickly gray glow we'd been living with for hours. "Military response units have entered the area," my phone announced suddenly, making us both jump. "Remain inside. Help is here." The static began to fade, replaced by the sound of engines, shouted orders, boots on pavement. Through the gaps in the blankets, I could see the fog starting to thin, pushed back by floodlights and some kind of mist that smelled like ozone. Sarah's hand found mine in the darkness. "Is it over?" I listened carefully. The clicking in the kitchen had stopped. The voices outside were human now, clear, authoritative, real. No more static, no more wrong sounds, no more familiar voices trying to lure us out. "I think it might be," I said quietly. "But we're going to stay right here until someone comes to get us. Okay?" She nodded, leaning against me. Outside, I could hear someone with a megaphone announcing that the area was being secured, that house-to-house searches would begin soon, that we should stay inside and wait for evacuation. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "What happens now? After they get us out?" I looked down at her, at Mr. Whiskers clutched against her chest, at the brave face she was trying to maintain. "I don't know, monkey, but we'll figure it out together." She was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Like the princess and the knight in your story?" "Exactly like that." I pulled her closer as boots thudded on our front porch. "We survived the night. That's what matters." The front door crashed inward with a splintering of wood. Sarah screamed as armored figures poured in, weapons raised, equipped with strange goggles that glowed faintly blue around the edges. "Clear," one shouted, sweeping the entrance. 2 civilians in the living room. "Stay where you are," another voice commanded. "How long since eye contact with the entities?" "We haven't looked," I called back, keeping Sarah behind me. "We've been in our fort since it started." A soldier approached quickly, his movements precise and urgent. The goggles made his eyes look alien, mechanical. "No time to verify. Put these on, now." He thrust 2 pairs of similar goggles at us. "Do not open your eyes until they're secured. You have 3 seconds." I helped Sarah first, making sure the strap was tight around her head, then put mine on. The world through the goggles was strange. Everything had a blue tint, and the fog seemed to glow faintly red where it still lingered. "Move!" The soldier grabbed my arm. "We've got 12 more houses to clear on this block. Safe house is 2 miles east. Stay between us. Keep the goggles on no matter what." They hustled us outside. Through the goggles, I could see them. The hollow ones, illuminated in stark red against the blue-tinted world. They were retreating from the military's advance, but their movements were wrong, jerky, like broken marionettes. "Don't look directly at them even with the goggles," our escort warned as we rushed to an armored vehicle. "Filters aren't perfect yet." The streets were chaos, soldiers everywhere, more armored vehicles, helicopters overhead spraying something that made the fog dissipate. Through it all, civilians in goggles were being rushed to vehicles like ours. "What about our neighbors?" I asked as they loaded us in. "The Andersons next door." "Already cleared," the soldier cut me off. "Either evacuated or compromised. No time for details. Move." The drive to the safe house was tense, fast. Sarah clung to me and Mr. Whiskers as we swerved around abandoned cars and through military checkpoints. Through the goggles, I could see other convoys converging on what looked like the old community center. The safe house was a fortress. Walls of portable barriers, floodlights everywhere, more soldiers with those glowing goggles. Inside, the gymnasium was filled with shell-shocked survivors, all wearing the same protective eyewear. "Stay here," our escort ordered, already turning to leave. "Keep the goggles on. Don't take them off for anyone or anything until you receive direct orders from command." I saw familiar faces in the crowd. Mrs. Anderson clutching her cat, Principal Harrison comforting a group of students, even Rita from the factory. All of us changed. All of us survivors of a night that had transformed our world forever. "Daddy?" Sarah's voice was small beneath the noise of the evacuation. "What happens now?" I looked down at her through the strange blue tint of the goggles, at the brave face she was still trying to maintain. "I don't know, Monkey, but we're alive. We're together. And right now, that's enough." Outside, beyond the safe house walls, I could hear the continuing sounds of the military operation. More helicopters, more vehicles, more rescues in progress. The sun was rising somewhere behind all that fog and chaos, but I knew the world it illuminated would never be the same again.